최고.
Alright guys, welcome back. I'm down the beach today. We're just going to do a bit of a tackle run through. You guys all been asking about my blue water stuff, so my jigging and vibing and that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do today in this video is just going to run you through all the stuff I take out in the boat when I'm heading offshore. So basically I do run a whole bunch. I do try to be prepared for all situations when I go offshore. You never know what's sort of going to pop up. So yeah, whenever I head out in the big boat, I always have a bit of a range of tackle. Always handy to have a few combos. So I try to have one always ready with a slow pitch jig on. So as you'd know, you would have seen me do a lot of slow pitch jigging. I've been doing it for a long time and I really enjoy it. So always have a slow pitch in the boat, but sometimes that doesn't work. So I like to carry a vibing rod. The offshore vibing scene's been hard for a long time to get the right sort of weight vibes for fishing offshore. Nomad's obviously brought out the max vibes, which are sort of thin and heavy, which have sort of opened up a whole range of possibilities offshore. So it's sort of opened the door for a sort of new sort of market, new technique, I guess you could call it, and that also requires its own sort of rod to do it properly. So I'll run you through the vibe and stuff, and then I've also got all my casting rods here. So I always have a casting rod just in case like a school of tuna pops up, or you know, if I'm out close to the reef or some poor man's flats, I can always have a couple of casts for some trout. So I'm going to run you through them. All right, so you would have seen me use this one before. That's my little P3 slow element from Ocean's Legacy. No new rod, they've been around for a while. Super popular, really powerful little slow pitch rod. And I've got that married up with a 1500 HG. That's a F custom Offshore jigger. So it's got the fall lever here, which basically just adjusts your mechanical brakes. So you can basically you can fine tune your fall rates and that sort of thing. So I don't really use it a great deal. I do like to use my finger. There's a nice little gap in the back here of your Offshore jiggers where you can just run your finger straight on the line, so you've got a good feeling of it. And I use that for anything from sort of 60 up to 100, 120 gram jigs. That's a 100 gram on there at the moment. But yeah, this rod does everything from about 60 right up to about 130. 60 is not ideal for it. It does require a bit more finesse technique. So you do need to load the rod tip and pop it a little bit better. But I find for a P3 rod, you go anything lighter than this and you don't have the power to stop a lot of the fish that we get out here. So basically that tip section is nice and soft, and it gives that nice bit of pop to your lure. So it's just a little bit more forgiving for your technique. And you know, if someone's jumping in the boat, I'd hand that to them straight up, because I just know that the rod's a bit more forgiving and it's going to help them get the right technique. So basically that's one of my go-tos. But just recently I did get a second combo. That's it there. That's no new reel. I've had that reel since 2014, and this is the reason why I've got so many Offshore jiggers. I bought this in 2014 on a pre-order. It's a limited edition model. It's got a couple little features there. I won't sort of go too deep into it. And that's on a P3 Elementus. So the difference between the Elementus and the slow element is basically the Elementus has 30% more power. So it's a lot more powerful rod. It's a lot more refined. So with your technique, you have to have your timing and everything perfect to get that right amount of pop. But if you've got your technique dialed, you'll find this rod is going to get a lot better action than your slow element. So for those guys a little bit more advanced, this is probably the rod for you. And yeah, I use this out basically anything from 20 meters right out to 50. I've knocked over some pretty good reds and all sorts of stuff on this. So super powerful little rod. A lot of people think it's a bait catching rod or something when I get on the boat with them, but yeah, that thing is definitely up to task when you're chasing big reds and nannies and that sort of thing. So both of them reels are spooled up with Sunline. That's the P3, which is a 50 pound in the Siglon ADV. And it's got that deep resin injection into the resin after it's braided, which gives it a little bit of extra abrasion resistance. And being P3, it's super fine. So when you're jigging, you want to try and get as fine as you can, but maintain your strength, because when you're jigging, you might be down about 50 meters down, and you don't want to have a big belly in your line, because you want that direct contact straight over the top of your jig, which is what helps you get that walk the dog sort of action. So basically, yeah, I run the P3. And then another really important thing when I'm when I'm talking about jigging stuff is your leader diameter. So I talked about this in the last video, but definitely make sure you have a good look at all your different diameters and that sort of thing when you're in the shop, because you know, just that leader, as you can see, it's quite long. It runs all the way up the rod tip and then back down to here. And you know, I like that little bit of extra length just to give the little bit more stretch to add some pop to the jig when you got 50 meters of line out. But also, if you have too much leader and it's too thick, you're going to create a lot more drag on your line. So it's just going to end up with a belly in the line, and like every disadvantage you can take out of your rig to make it, you know, more beneficial is going to amount to more fish on the boat. So yeah, if it says 35 on the packet, just keep an eye on this smaller number down the bottom here, and that's going to tell you what its maximum breaking strain. So if you're tying a friction knot like your PR or your FG or whatever like that, you are going to get that maximum breaking strain. So yeah, 50 pound is what I run on these. I find it's plenty for pretty much everything I do out here, whether it's in close on the shoals or even out wider out amongst the reef. So, you know, it is quite thin. It is quite a light sort of sporting setup, and when I'm undergunned in this, I'll bring out the big dog. And that's it there. That's a 3000 Offshore jigger, so quite a fair bit bigger. This one's got I think it's 500 meters of P5, and that P5's 80 pound. So yeah, 3000 Offshore jigger. I've got that rigged up. That's a P5 Elementus, which is, you know, basically I'll use this on anything sort of one. You can jig 100 gram jigs, but you can't get the right amount of pop. The rod tip is soft, but it's not really designed for slow pitch. So you really need to sort of go a little bit heavier and actually try and put the pop into the lure. But I generally find where I'm using this, the fish are less fussy. So it's usually out wider, out amongst the reef and that sort of thing. So if you know, if I'm not getting the perfect technique, I find them fish are a little bit less pressured. So I find that it still sort of gets the job done. So I usually run that in with 130s, 150s, right up to 200, 250. Not that I use that size jig a lot, but yeah, basically I use that for all my heavier sort of applications, and even that doesn't stop them all, but it's always fun trying. So yeah, summarized up, there's the three there, 3 jigging combos. The slow element is awesome, like really forgiving rod. I'll just put that in the hands of someone who hasn't really jigged a lot and they want to sort of have a go if they jumped on the boat with me. The Elementus is, you know, it's a bit more of a refined rod. It's probably my favorite rod. You know, it's just got a feel of finesse about it, but then when you load up, it's super powerful. And then the big dog, the Elementus P5, for when things get out of hand. So yeah, a lot of people are asking me the difference between the Elementus and the slow element. So yeah, basically Elementus is a lot like crisper and a lot more responsive, 30% more power, and it just you know, it returns to its natural straight form a lot quicker after each jig than the slow element. But the slow element is a lot more user friendly, and if you don't have your technique dialed, it's probably the better rod for you. Personally, that's me, the Elementus. That's a P3, both P3, identical combos almost. You know, it's always a toss up which one I pick up first, because you know, I like them both, but you know, that Elementus is just that little bit nicer to use, and you know, gives me jig a little bit more pop with a little bit less effort. So that's the main differences in between them two, but it's always handy to have them both on the boat. All right, so you will notice on these reels, I had to go and buy an aftermarket, but I do like to run the same handle on all my reels that are very similar or for similar applications. You would have noticed in the last video, I run the same style of knob on all my reels, and what that is for is just for me personally, like when I pick up when I switch in between combos, everything feels the same and everything is the same in the reels. They got the exact same ratio, and I do that with my bait casters in the creeks as well. So same ratio, same handle, and it's just a different rod tip for different lures, and that's basically that's the concept I run across with pretty much everything I've got. I've worked out exactly where I like my retrieve ratios to be. I've worked out what handles feel nice and what are comfortable to use, you know, both while working lures and when you're under pressure fighting a fish. And yeah, basically I'll make sure I've got the same handle on each sort of reel. Like with all my casting stuff, I've got, you know, and all the bigger stuff, I've got 45mm ball handles. In the smaller stuff, I've got 35mm ball handles. It's just, you know, it just helps when you go in between combos. You don't pick something up and end up favoring something that because it feels better in your hand more than another one when you should be using a different rod. So it's just handy to have, you know, everything nice and uniform, and you know, that way when it doesn't matter which rod you pick up, you're comfortable using it and you're comfortable to use it all day. You're not wishing you're going back to another one because it's got a more comfortable handle or whatever. So yeah, It's a little bit anal, I know, but that's just the way I am. You know, I like it to be, you know, quite uniform across the combos. So yeah, I pick up anything I pick up is always going to be comfortable, easy to use, and I'll be able to run that for hours. And then if I swap combos, it's going to be much the same. So it's all the little things that make a big thing with fishing, especially lure fishing. You know, you want to try and give yourself as many advantages as possible. One last thing while I'm on the slow pitch thing. So when you're traveling in between spots, never leave your jig on there. It's just going to smash your blank. It's going to damage your blank, and then I guarantee that's where your rod's going to break. So you can just use your split ring. If you don't know how to tie them, that's how you do it. Tie straight to your solids, a direct connection, no weak points. I run a split ring just there, and the split ring only purpose is just to change my lure. So good thing is, a pair of splitty pliers, I can whip that jig off in a second. But what I find even easier is these rod socks. So I just whack one of these over, spray sand everywhere while I'm doing it, and the jig's in there. Doesn't matter how much it gets bashed on the way out in 20 knots, it's not going to damage your blank. So definitely just keep them, and whenever I'm going in between spots, I just put that on. I don't bother with the reel cover. I just put the rod cover on just to stop the jig smashing the blank, and then I just chuck it up in the rod locker. So yeah, very handy if you're doing any jigging. Just protect your investment like that. $15 rod cover is all it takes, and it just saves that damage to your blank. That's basically my slow pitch stuff run through. I'm going to run through some vibing gear now. All right, so when I'm out vibing, that's combo, yeah, there. You would have seen it before. That's a little 6,000 twin power. I do have the 7500 Maxwell spool on there. They do have a little bit more drag. All these companies coming out with such big drag ratings on their reels, you're never going to use 14 kilos, but you know, I just think it looks nice. It holds a little bit more line. I think I get about 400 meters of P3 on there. So if something big does come along, I've got plenty of line there. It's a new Nomad braid. That's called Ammonite. That's a P3, which I believe is about 50 pound. It's crazy how thin and smooth this stuff is. It's only brand new to the market. I have caught fish on it, but it's still very new. So, you know, so far so good. But I'm running that on the NS-SW game. You see me load this rod up on some big fish. It is incredible. It's the only one in the country at the moment, but they are due to turn up really soon. I know I've said it 100 times on my videos, but I've got good word that they're in the country. We're just waiting for them to turn up to the factory to be distributed. So that's a P3 to 6, which is, you know, plenty for most of what I'm doing. I've landed nice reds on that, plenty of good nannies, heaps of like good quality fish, even that really big GT. So what I really like about this rod is it's 6'10". It's not quite 7 foot. It's got a nice, it's got a fair bit of punch in the tip, which is what you want when you're jigging them heavier vibes. You don't want the whole tip to fold away. You want to maintain some power there to put the energy into the jig, because if the rod tip folds away too much, you've lost a lot of the energy, a lot of your pop that you're trying to put into your lure to get directional changes, and that erratic action is lost in the rod. So I really like that for it. I feel like I've got, like, you know, the perfect rod for vibing. That's a super light combo. It's like, it feels like something that you would use in the creek, but you can knock over big quality fish with it. So 6'10". I don't really like them too long for vibing, and I don't like it too short. You want a nice long axis so you can just put a little bit of action in, and your rod tip's moving a long way at the end of the rod, so you don't have to like do crazy big motions to put a lot of energy into the jig. It's just sort of smaller taps and that, especially with them bigger vibes, which are a bit heavier and they got a little bit more resistance. You've got to sort of really work them to pull them up through the water. So yeah, they're probably only about a week away. Maybe, but that's it there. Keep an eye out for them real soon. They're going to be a very affordable like option for this sort of fishing. So another awesome thing about this one is it doubles up as a bait rod. It's got a, you know, that tip there's got, the power comes in nice and fast, so it's good, ideal for setting hooks. You know, I see some people bait fishing with their slow pitch rod, and the whole rod, like the whole concept of it being a slow tapered rod, which means that, you know, it folds away a lot slower, so you get a bend right through the whole blank. Where's the power to set your hooks in that sort of rod? It's right down the bottom, so you really need to fold the whole rod before you can set the hooks. So that's why I like this one. It's just a bit faster, sets them hooks nice and easy if you are bait fishing, and it also doubles up as like a, let's say like a 5 or 7 inch soft plastic rod if I'm fishing a 1 to 2 ounce jig head. So very versatile little combo to have in the boat, and yeah, one of my favorites. That's my heavy one. I've got a lighter one as well, which I'll run you through now. And that's my little one there. It's just a little 4000. That's a Stellar on there, obviously. PE2 Ocean's Legacy focal. I like this PE2. It's 7'2", so for the same reason I like the other ones, just that little bit longer but not too long. I find if I go to 7'4", it starts to get really awkward when I'm fighting bigger fish like down deep with that extra length of rod hanging out over the edge of the boat. It's just becomes a bit more cumbersome. So 7'2" I find is like my maximum, and just being a little bit lighter rod, it's not loading up as hard as the other one, so a little bit of it, or what, 4 extra inches of length doesn't seem to affect me too much. But I've just got that rigged up. That's P2 Sunline Siglon, so a little bit thinner. I generally use this for like your 110 and your 95mm vibes when I'm fishing in a bit closer or in around the islands or in shallower reefs and that sort of thing. So I just find that you know, that smaller combo, a little bit longer, you can get them really finesse little actions when you're hopping a vibe through sand patches on the reef, or, you know, even if you're in 20 meters of water, you get a lot of feel with the lighter rod and the lighter line. So definitely that's probably one of my more workhorse reels that I use a lot when I'm sort of fishing in close, or, you know, it's always in the boat with me. So yeah, when I'm vibing, same as the slow pitch stuff, I will run the finer, like lighter gauge leaders. So just keep an eye on that. It's very important. Sort of often overlooked is just your importance of your leader material. I prefer to use the nylon with all this stuff as well. I don't use any fluorocarbon whatsoever offshore, all nylon. So that stretch offers a lot of forgiveness when you got your fish up close to the boat and you get a wrap on the leader. Just having that little bit of stretch just helps the fish from falling off the hooks. So yeah, that's it there. Little light one, but yeah, 110mm vibes and 95s, and then my other one I'll use for 130s and 150s, which are significantly bigger and have a lot more drag, which is why I need that heavier tip. All right, so whenever I'm out in the boat, I always have a casting rod with a metal slug rigged up. That's him there. Look at that, I've got a Daiwa. I've got that rigged up. That's I believe it's P2 in the Nomad Tough Lock braid, which is a new one. It's a 9-strand. It's nice and thin, nice and smooth. Basically, I'll use that for casting if I see some tuna or something, if I'm in between spots and I see some longtails. We all love sashimi at my house, so longtails come home. But yeah, I'm running that on it's a little 1.5 to 3 Nomad Offshore spin. Really nice little light rod, and it's got plenty of power. So, you know, if you hook something and you've got to control the fight around the boat, I find this rod's really, you know, it's awesome for, you know, just it can bend into stupid angles is what I'm trying to say. You can put it under a crazy amount of pressure next to the boat. I don't suggest high sticking rods, but I've seen this thing bent up in all sorts of angles. And one thing I really like about the Nomad rods is how forgiving they are, both when you're working lures and when you're fighting fish. So yeah, that's just super light little combo. Once again, it's like something that you'd use in the creek, balances really nicely. And I've just got a little 80-gram Ridgeback casting slug on there, and yeah, I'll use that for all my tuna. Always got that one in the boat. It's always handy, ready to go with the slug tied on. All right, and then I've got this one here. That's a 6000 Stella. Once again, I've got the little Maxwell spool on it. That's a 7500 Maxwell spool, which just got a little bit of extra line capacity. Same as the other one. I've got P3 Siglon on it, so it's got about 400 meters, and yeah, I usually run that for like all my poor man sort of flat stuff. If I'm fishing around the islands and there's shallow bommies and rocks and I want to throw a little mad scat or a little stick bait or some sort at, you know, at the bommies and try and pick up trout or whatever, and that's the rod I use there. It's a Nomad. That's the P2 to 4 in the offshore spin. Awesome rod, really nice soft tip and plenty of power down low. I do alternate this between a P4 Ocean's Legacy focal and this rod here, but you know, once again with the Nomad stuff, it's just really forgiving rod, really easy to use, and highly recommend that. But yeah, that combo feels amazing in your hand, and you know, it's fine if you're fishing. Even if I'm out on the reef and I want to fish the flats chasing trout and that sort of thing, this will get it all done quite easily. All right, and then when we're out in the reef and we're out chasing the real big stuff, that's the combo there. It's a that's a P6 Ocean's Legacy Aggressor. It's a brand new one to the market. Not a cheap rod, but a very nice forgiving rod. Hurts the fish a lot, doesn't hurt the angler a lot, which is what I like. I'm quite tall and lanky, so I don't have, you know, that low down grunt to get into the fish. I'm, you know, a bit top heavy, I guess you'd call it. So, you know, I get manhandled by fish quite a lot. So yeah, I like the P6. You know, I just feel I can control the fish a lot better with that. And that's spooled up with P6 Sunline Monster Battle, which is 90 pounds. So I've got plenty of, you know, break and strain there. It's not going to just you know, I'm not going to get smoked by everything, but the rod is just a little bit more forgiving, plenty of power down low, but a nice soft tip, which is like really good. Really good for casting your smaller stickies and that sort of thing over the flats. And then if I do want to chase GTs, that's perfectly fine. It is a 10,000 HG reel, so what I've done is I've put on the 16,000 Maxwell Monster spool, and what that does is just gives me a slightly bigger diameter, so I do get more line pickup. And you would have heard me talk about gear ratios and stuff in the last video, but I do get a little bit more line pickup with that bigger spool, which puts me at about 105 centimeters of handle turn, which I find is quite a fast retrieve anyway. And I've still got plenty of torque in the reel when I'm like loaded up and I need to get a crank on the fish to turn his head or keep him away from a bommy. That, you know, just having that slightly lower gear ratio, a bit more torque in the reel does help, you know, just to control the fight and that sort of thing. So yeah, basically that's rigged up on that PE6 aggressor. Really nice soft tip on that, good for casting your smaller stuff. I can cast things right down to sort of 70-80 grams with this, so it is rated down to 60. I haven't cast 60s on it yet, but I've cast 70s and they cast a mile, and it'll cast right up to, well, it says 150 on the blank, but you know, I rarely throw 150 gram lure. It's more sort of like 100, 120 would be where I'd sort of tap out with throwing things. I'm not really a big GT fisherman. I'm not really going to go and pull up on points and cast at fusies and that sort of thing. I've done it all before, and it doesn't really excite me that much. But what I'll use that for is for over the reef flats, chasing big trout, you know, just all the big stuff in tiger country when you get up on top of the reef and in amongst all the bommies. So that's the showstopper, and definitely gets the job done. So yeah, when you're choosing leader for jigging, basically, like I said, look for nylon stuff. This stuff here is like your big game shock leader. So it's basically very similar diameter. They're both a Sunline product, same diameter as the nylon shock leader, but this is just comes in a big hank, so you don't get that memory in your leader, and it stays nicely, lays out nicely once you put it on your reel. And yeah, it's not cheap stuff, but it is really good, super stretchy. And I use that for basically all my casting along the flats, and you know, most of my jigging when I'm out in the deeper stuff. So generally when I'm slow pitch jigging, I'll run like a 90 to a 100, maybe 130 litre, depending on how rough it is, what I'm fishing on. So, you know, if I'm fishing like rocky sort of bottom and it's 50 metres down, I'm expecting big angry stuff, I'll generally just run a 130 straight off the bat. So it's 0.9 of a millimetre for 130, same as the other nylon shock leader, but I just find that stuff there, just being in the big hank is really good for, you know, just no memory. So yeah, super stretchy, and that's what you want when with your jigging leaders. You don't want to be running a fluoro with no stretch in it. You want that little bit of stretch, so when you load your rod tip up, it loads, it pops, it pulls the line all the way down, and you do actually load up the leader, and it does sort of act like a secondary rod tip in a way. Being down deep and having that little bit of stretch gives it that pop to get that directional change. So very important when you're slow pitch jigging is just keep an eye on your leader choice. You want thin and stretchy, in my opinion, and yeah, keep an eye out for them too when you're in the shops. All right, so yeah, that's it. We've gone through all the rods. That's basically what I'll carry whenever I go offshore fishing. So I always have that number of rods in the boat. There's 8 rods there, so you know, I'm always carrying a lot of gear, which is why I like to fish out of my own boat a lot, because I do overload my mates' boats when I jump in. But yeah, those 8 rods is basically what comes on every trip, and you know, they've all got their purpose, and they all get, you know, I would almost say an equal amount of use. But I have been favouring the jigging stuff lately, as you would have noticed, and I haven't done a great deal of casting, but that will change as we get some better weather. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. While you're here, if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button. Peace.